Betsy Koepke, educational psychologist with an MA, Ed.S, and Robbins Results International Train to Life coach, has taken the frustration points of her own life's journey, worked through them, and has been sharing the love and lessons with others since 2015. The roads that Betsy has traveled include in the woods of Virginia, leading a group of 12 teenage girls, hiking the Appalachian Trail, living and traveling up and down the west coast of the United States, studying in London, and trekking through Southeast Asia. You can even ask her about her brief Power Rangers stint in Hollywood. Very exciting. Today, she speaks, she teaches, and coaches all over the country about how to cultivate and sustain mental and emotional vitality and fulfillment, even in the face of extreme pressures and challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Betsy Koepke. Spirit fingers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let me work on sharing my screen here. And while I'm doing that, I just want to say that I love this group already. I feel like I've landed in some kind of jackpot of, wedding and event specialist. I just love your energy. All right, can you see my screen? Yeah? Okay.
I don't think we can see it full. Yeah, there we go.
And now it's on event or on present mode. Beautiful. Okay, I gotta grab one thing here. Oh, come on. Woo. All right, friends. Yes, what I've got here is a real snake. Her name is Hermie. She is my son Owen's pet snake. And she's going to help me teach you about the power of transformational change and how we can shift from a crisis to an opportunity mindset, which seems like something that may come in handy for 2021. 7 years ago, I had a phobia of snakes. For the record, I also had a phobia of public speaking. And I grew up sharing a bedroom with my older sister who had a phobia of snakes. So I would grow up like waking up in the night to hear her freaking out that a snake was at the bottom of her bed and it was going to bite her or strangle her. And I have a highly sensitive nervous system. So by proxy, I developed a phobia of snakes. Now, before I go into my own transformational story about how I'm able to have Hermie around my neck here, I actually want to encourage you to kind of dig deep right now. And I feel like I know, like we've all kind of been digging deep, but I am one who really likes to go to the deep places with people because I understand that that's how you're going to access the most of your potential. You got to dig deep in order to find, the gem that you are. So I really want you to kind of like understand why. Why did you sign up for this seminar today, this webinar? Why are you here? There's a lot of folks, like, let's just face it, that are in some really dark places right now. And that might be you, and that's okay. I'm glad you're here. I hear loneliness, pretty common right now. It may be a spouse. It may be your children with the changes they're going through. It may be your employees. I don't know what it is for you. Maybe it's that you have a stack of scary bills. Like, I can relate to that one. But you're here, and I want you to understand like why it's really important for you to learn how to get and stay in your zone in 2021. Because if you don't determine that why, I mean, I love to small talk and chat, but if we're not really like determining our why and really maximizing the time we have together, then you're not getting the results. And Hermie's doing my slides here for me, and I want you to get results. Okay. So I'm going to share with you what my why was 7 years ago. I realized I've got to figure out how to do life differently, because at that time I was living in chronic pain. I was working as a psychologist in the public schools. I had 2 kids under the age of 5. Congratulations, Elizabeth, by the way. And my husband Tyler and we were like ships passing in the night, right? I was the household CEO. I was trying to do it all, balance it all, and felt like I was doing none of it very well. So that's already my state, right? My body's burning out. My marriage feels like it's, on fumes. My mental and emotional health was vacillating between anxiety and depression and back again. And unfortunately, that I was functioning in the state that we now pretty much consider normal, right? And then tragedy struck in my family. I'm not going to get into all the hairy details here because we just don't have time for it today. But my family experienced a financial crisis that resulted in a domino effect of skeletons coming out of our closet. It wasn't pretty. It was messy. It was scary. There was a lot of disruption. There was a lot of uncertainty, many, many, many emotions flying. It was not dissimilar to what we're experiencing now, within my personal life. It was very similar to what we're experiencing on a macro level in our local communities. So I can stand here, like the reason that I can stand here and talk to you and kind of be in this more inspirational place is because I ultimately found when I looked back that I was so thankful for that crisis, because if it hadn't happened, I literally would not be here meeting all you cool people today. And what I realized, and maybe you're all getting a glimpse of this, is that sometimes when we think that everything is falling apart, it's really falling into place. And from what I could tell, this organization looks like it started maybe as a result of the 2009 financial crisis. So you guys really get that we're sowing the seeds right now. Like, this is our origin story. This gets to be our next kind of iteration of our origin story. So as I went through my own transformational process and I began to really kind of geek out and study transformational change, and then, coaching individuals, coaching small business owners, bigger organizations, I noticed that and found that there is a structure to the change process. And even though, especially when things feel messy and scary, it really helps to lean in on some kind of framework or some kind of structure to help our nervous system, our brains, and our hearts and our, emotions just make sense of what's happening. So here's how it goes. And you'll probably see yourself going through. This isn't like it all happens in, one neat, process here. We can be in different states, sometimes within the same minute, you can go through these different states. But in general, there's an old status quo. So a year ago, 2020, right? There's our old status quo. And if we're being really honest with ourselves, our old status quo probably involves a lot of denial. A lot of I'm fine, things are fine, when really actually maybe my sister just went to rehab again, or I'm pretty sure my spouse is cheating on me, or I'm afraid I'm going to go bankrupt every night. I mean, old status quo is very often yeah, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And then there's a foreign element that comes into play. So for us, it was COVID. Now we've got all this political disruption happening. And it all feels kind of new, and it's foreign, it's scary. And so what happens is people go into resistance. So you saw that and probably experienced that yourself with COVID, oh my God, no, this isn't happening. That denial is a really, really powerful force. And then as time, and you'll notice the time, as time progresses, it's oh God, no, this isn't going away. In fact, in many respects, it's getting worse. And so you see people starting to feel the chaos of it all and the swirl. Then at the very bottom, we talk about rock bottom. People are desperate. They are desperate. They are clinging to the old ways. They can't see what's new yet. This whole below that timeline is the transition. So you can think about when you would throw a ball from one catcher's mitt to the other, there's this start point and there's this end point, but there's this whole transition in between where you're just like up in the air, like, what? I don't know. Like, who is running the show here? So that is the challenging part, is to navigate everything below the line there. And when you can learn how to do that, just in terms of your emotional and mental state, because you can't do the whole world, right? All we can do, all we can control is ourselves. That's when you can start to, have the light bulbs go off, which I'm sure you guys have been doing this for, most of 2020, getting those new transforming ideas, starting to integrate those into your businesses, into your personal lives. And eventually we will arrive at a new status quo. And hopefully, the idea is that we're evolving and it's actually better. And we can all actually look back and be like, oh, thank goodness for that crisis, because now this is better, okay? And for me, my personal story is like, oh, thank goodness for that crisis in my family, because I would not be living nowhere close to my full potential as a human being, nowhere close to living my purpose, all right? So the tricky part is all this stuff below. Let's see if my tech is running. All that stuff. Let's talk about, this all sounds great, Betsy, once you get to the new status quo, right? But what about this time in between? So I'm going to give you 3 shots to thrive today. The first one is stand guard at the door of your mind. Now, how many of you, when you tap into the headlines, can relate to feeling like this? I know that I can. And, if your mind is doing that, how functional are you? How effective are you at being a parent, at being a business owner, at playing these roles that you play? Stand guard at the door of your mind is really all about having that awareness for yourself of when you're, you're observing your own mental, emotional patterns, and you're understanding when to pull back from, surfing social media or engaging in those conversations that are, really, really stressing you out. And now it's like this is the time for our mental and emotional health to be at its best. And what we're finding is a whole lot of folks have not been going to the mental and emotional gym, and now they're just like feeling that lack of working out. So the second piece, as you're, standing guard at the door of your mind, you're putting boundaries, you're understanding like, yep, I need to understand what's happening in the larger world. I can't just completely shut it out. And I kind of think of the infinity symbol. I'm going to go in and understand as much of what I need to understand is happening. And then when I notice myself getting into fight, flight physiology, when I notice myself just getting flooded with cortisol and stress chemicals, I'm going to build the habit of pulling myself out, putting boundaries up, and then focusing. So where focus goes, energy flows. This is your thought to thrive number 2. You may have heard this one before. I certainly didn't invent it. But in order to really kind of illustrate this, just think about if you're driving this car and you are, starting to skid out. Where should you be looking? Should you be looking at that pole there, or should you be looking at the open road? We are definitely in a skid right now. And it's just like our car. If we're looking at that pole and the problem and everything that's wrong, that's where the momentum of our thoughts and our feelings and our behaviors are going to go. And if we lead a team, if we lead our kids, whatever it is, we're the leaders. That's where our energy and our momentum is going to go, and we're going to crash and burn. The tricky part is when all of this is happening, it's just so easy for our brains to focus on that pole rather than the 100 other things that happen in our day that are totally normal or going well. So right now, especially when you're in the skid, it's more important than ever to focus on solution, collaboration, that kind of thing. Yet, most people have a hard time with that. And this is what Hermie is here to really help us understand. So she comes into play because we have, all of us, me, you, Hermie, we all share a similar function in terms of our brain, which is our lower brain. It's sometimes called the reptile brain, the croc brain, and it's because we share it with creatures of the reptile kingdom. So this part of our brain, our lower brain, it really helps. Its job is to keep us alive. Its job is to make sure that we survive. And it loves for everything to be the same. It loves it for everything to be rigid. So, for example, people will stay in toxic relationships. They'll stay in, toxic work settings. They'll stick with what they know because it's the same, because their lower brain is really activated. A lot of folks right now, for good reason, have their lower brain activated and have a really hard time with the amount of change that we're experiencing. So the key for you, where I want to invite you all, and I'm sure you've been here, I'm sure, we go back and forth, but is to really practice like that mental and emotional conditioning of accessing your prefrontal cortex. Because unlike Hermie, we've got a prefrontal cortex. And this is where, when we light up this part of our brain, by asking ourselves better questions, then we can come up with the creative solutions. Then we can communicate more constructively. Then we can collaborate with each other. And oh my gosh, do we need that more than ever, right? So let me show you, just as an example, the folks who understand. You know what? I'm going to put Hermie down for a second. Say goodbye, Hermie.
Hi, everybody. This is Matt Sherry with Complete Wedding and Events Minneapolis. We do events. We do photography, videography, DJ, photo booth, lighting, day of coordination. At Complete Wedding and Events, we capture, we create, we do. If you're having an event, check us out today, completewedo.com/Minneapolis.
Okay. So when you are able to consistently stay in this place where you're accessing your higher brain, then the research shows even people who experience post-traumatic stress, which a lot of us, let's face it, in our family and friends, we're experiencing and going to keep experiencing. For those of us who learn how to kind of rewire our nervous systems right now to focus on, there's a whole phenomenon called post-traumatic growth. We actually have the opportunity to make things even better, to get stronger, to get clearer, to cultivate bigger, better, stronger businesses long term. So we really want to, and it takes time. There's always the time component. This isn't going to happen overnight. We didn't develop the thinking and feeling patterns, in a day. But we can do this work to gradually condition ourselves and get stronger and stronger and have an even higher elevated well-being than before the crisis. So thought to thrive number 3 is a question, because that's how you access your higher brain. So how do I become self-full? And what I mean by self-full is not necessarily full of yourself and selfish and egotistical. It is, how do I become full of love and light and leadership? And how do I remain an attractive force in my community right now, even through this hardship? So this was one of the most powerful things for me, going from being that fried to that fulfillionaire, was that I really surrendered to this notion that I could not pour from an empty cup. And I let myself put myself and my self-care on the top of my to-do list. And here's the key: not feel guilty about it. So keep in mind with my story here that this all changed for me because of this financial crisis in my family. Okay, so I'm at the point of desperation. I am like, my ego is shattered, like shame's coming up, like it's impacting relationships, like it's all the stuff. And the way that I started, like the pivotal piece was that I started to kind of look around and ask myself better questions, take a look at how I'd lived my life thus far, and decide for myself, is this how I want to do it going forward, or do I want to break out of some of these patterns and, you know, do something new? So what my secret sauce is that I thought about the resource of time differently. And as I noticed everybody was in the hamster wheel, stressing about the resource of money, I really took a pause and was like, I'm going to rethink how to use the resource of time. I'm going to learn and understand how to use the resource of time, because it's the resource that levels the playing field. We all got the 24/7. I don't care what else is happening, you know, with anybody else in the world. We've all got 24/7. It's a universal principle. So if I can learn how to master time, I can convert that into money. I can convert that into my well-being. So you should have the handout, the Time Target to Thrive, that you got when you registered. And we're not going to go through that detail by detail, but it's part of an online course that I've created. It's part of coaching that I do. And I just wanted to give you a sense of the visual and what I'm talking about in terms of getting in the zone. We're not going to go through, you know, the tactical practical, but I am going to give you just a really brief exercise, really simple. And this is what I asked myself in order to kind of really pivot. So I encourage you can take a picture of this, you know, of this slide. And then I really highly encourage you to journal about this. Just set like a 10-minute timer even, and just take this time. The time is the nugget. Like most people they go into like scurrying and busying mode, and they just don't pause and take the time to get really clear. And clarity is super, super powerful. So I asked myself, I literally just a piece of paper. I said, what do I want to let go of that's no longer serving me? Drew a line. What do I desire as part of my world going forward? And then as I became a business owner and decided to move into entrepreneurship, I was like, where's the win-win? What do I need that I know other people also need, and that's in my zone? Because if it's in my zone and they need it, that's going to give me the energy to sustain this thing. Okay, and what I said no to was being in that hamster wheel, was generational alcoholism addiction, was being a people pleaser, was having too much stuff, was eating, you know, junky food, was being addicted to news headlines. And then, so I basically was saying no to all that old status quo, right? I've been there, done that, lived that. I saw the results that I was getting. And that's where you know, when you say no to the stuff that you no longer prefer, it suddenly makes a whole lot more room, time, space, energy for the things that you desire. So these are the things I said yes to. Being in more harmony with myself. So taking the time for yoga, more self-care, more play, more nutritional, you know, like actually fulfilling food. And probably the most important was yes to my personal power, right? Like recognizing that even from that low, desperate place, I could cultivate and I could step into my own personal power. And then, you know, I asked myself the question, okay, what is in my zone that is juicing me up right now that I know that other people need? And that's where I took it into the business realm. I created a Balance Not Burnout online course. So that was like 9 of my best life coaching exercises, right? Just in that online forum. I started working with, you know, individuals and teams. Okay. And then just doing that own internal work, taking the time to slow my roll and do my internal work, and starting to live kind of that light from the inside out became attractive, right? I'm like getting asked to do, you know, programs on TV and model and, you know, articles published. And then that turned into, this was like, I really kind of had to just trust this process. I had no idea when I was working as a psychologist in the schools 7 years ago that this was all going to unfold. I just had to kind of keep trusting them and that the path was going to unfold as I walked it. So that then turned into, I had changed so much that my husband was like, who is this woman? And so we realized that we needed, the next thing we needed, and the next thing my clients needed was this relationship piece. How do we do personal development as a couple? How do we do it when one person is changing and the other person is like, what is going on? So this is how I invited my husband into the business. And so we created an online course together. And, you know, we recognized that a whole lot of other couples were in similar situations where they needed that opportunity to do personal development, you know, in all those transitions. You guys know better than anybody in all those transitions of what married life involves. So what I really want you to take away from this is that without that personal life crisis, I would not have been living my purpose. There would have been no reason for y'all to invite me to come talk to you. And that personal crisis is what set me up for, and just, you know, following step by step, letting the path unfold is what set me up. When COVID hit last spring, I realized, oh, I'm actually in a decent position because I've got the online components, right? And now I can collaborate with folks like yourself, like, you know, in terms of this online course, like I've got this thing that I can do affiliates and we can both make money during this time. So it just was an amazing opportunity to realize that you don't have to worry or, you know, stress about everything out there. You can continue to just focus on you, do you, keep trusting yourself, keep letting that expand, and get to that place of even more well-being than before this all began. One last thing I want to share, actually two last things. A mantra that's really helped is hold the focus, stay in the loving. We definitely need a lot of loving servant leadership right now, and go the distance. And then if I can just shamelessly pitch this last thing, Mary Ellen Ryson, who's connected me with your group, she's a lawyer, and myself, and insurance agent, and another kind of hiring specialist. We're all gonna do a free Zoom panel, and we're targeting it toward restaurant owners, but it would be very applicable for you folks too. And so if you're interested in that, I can put the link in the chat bar. But while we're here together, I just wanted to share that's a free panel. We're gonna have a loan officer talking about the PPP loans right now, and then Allison Arth is gonna be our moderator. So thank you so much for your time, everybody. Really, I would love to connect with all of you. However we can make that happen.
Awesome. Betsy, thank you so much. Does anybody have any quick questions for Betsy now before we go into the breakouts? Go ahead and just unmute yourself if you do.
Matt, a couple came in to me, so I sent them to you via text. I can read them.
I'll go get my phone.
No, I can read them. I'll read them. Okay. Betsy, is there a good exercise to help forecast the new status quo for those that need a guesstimate of the future to help their business grow? So they're in that lower territory. How is a good way to start forecasting and thinking futuristically?
I mean, honestly, as much as you can tap into your, like, what do you envision? Your own vision, in some ways, is the best, what's the, like, lighthouse for where to go. So you get to be the visionary, you know, like you get to take the lead right now. You can take all, like, I'm just constantly kind of like taking data points, you know, and integrating it all. But ultimately, I just like sit and get quiet, and let myself come up with, kind of take that personal power and lead it.
Perfect.
And I can help coach, you know, I can help coach and guide like that process. But a lot of my work is like empowering people from within and inspiring people from within, because that's what will keep you juiced up to keep doing all the hard work it takes, you know?
Yeah, yeah, perfect. And then the other one was, for those that like to live in the past and have context of history, how do you convert them to think more optimistically about that future?
Yeah, there is a kind of a change process, where the first step is awareness, right? We can't change things that we're not aware of. I think we're all getting a whole big, huge helping of awareness right now. But then the next piece is desire. And this is like the tricky part, is that people have to want it. You have to have that emotional piece where you want it bad enough, because change means getting out of our comfort zone. I mean, most people just want to sit and be kind of comfy and complacent. I mean, me too. Like, and so you've really got to access that emotional piece for folks. They've got to want it themselves. You can want it for them all day long. Been there, done there, tried that. It's really about them digging deep on their why. And then after that comes knowledge, ability, and reinforcing the change. But that's the key. When you can find that key, when you can unlock that, you got to get to that big why.
Perfect. That's all the ones that came into me. Does anybody else have any questions for Betsy?
I love those questions.
Yeah, good ones.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Betsy, I just want to take a couple of seconds just to thank you for taking the time to do this for us. I think there's even just answering those last questions had a big impact as far as, you know, how do you get that started, you know? And then I think about myself and, you know, just the last, you know, few weeks and how I've been more motivated, and I know I'm in a position to take care of some of these things that you've been talking about. But it's tough. It is tough when you've been sitting on the couch for a while and feeling sorry for yourself, and you know, a 4-hour day seems exhausting, you know, because you're just used to it now. And
Mm-hmm.
um, that's something that I would strongly encourage everyone to just kind of dig deep and see and think about where your goals are and where you want to be. And you know, and it's not where you are right now, you know, and you got to start that process to move forward. And but thank you so much, Betsy. This was really fun. This is a lot of excitement for me. Hopefully everyone else feels